kick it off. Start.
Good afternoon and a very warm welcome to everybody. Welcome to our weekly Learning Your Lunchtime webinar, where we pretty much go live every week, either with a fantastic guest like Yolandie that we'll be speaking to today about research proposals, or I coach on a number of topics related to student success and workplace readiness. And one of our most popular recent webinars has been on time management and how to beat procrastination. And that's just something that we all face and we're all challenged with. So I'm keen to dive into, how Yolandie was successful in her research proposal stage, because at any aspect of your research degree, and especially at a PhD, you're going to have these distractions, you're going to have these challenges. But I would say that getting past your research proposal stage is, just that stamp of approval from your organization. So as always, guys, as everyone's just logging on, please do let us know where you're from. And we've got Unkabetse already. Welcome, Unkabetse. Definitely cannot wait for this. So I know he's probably one of those that went on and clicked the reminder on YouTube and got the emails. So well done, Unkabetse. You're probably way more organized than certainly I was today. I've just actually had my second vaccine jab, so hopefully I'll be fine for the rest of the interview. But was a little bit rushed coming online, but all good. And I think we're going to have such an incredible conversation with Yolandie. So Yolandie, why don't you just introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit about your journey. And please, who convinced you to do a PhD? I mean, really, who was that guy?
Who was that guy, Pete? Oh, thanks, Pete, and thanks for the opportunity. Now, this is our second one, so exciting times. So my name is Yolandie Richards. I work with Pete. When we still did face-to-face before curfew lockdown, we were sitting next to each other and we had quite regular discussions. So I could see Pete working hard on his PhD. And approximately a year ago, Pete, can you remember? I think it was we had a team lunch. No, team dinner. Pete just finished his PhD, and we're like congratulating Pete. We're proud of Pete. And I said to Pete, I'm thinking of it. I'm not doing it. I'm thinking of it. And he told me, just do it. Don't think too much about it. Just go and do it. And just imagine a year from now, you've got a topic, you're enrolled, you've got a mentor or a supervisor, and you might have a project appraisal approved. I thought, no, that can be amazing. And we're sitting here a year later, and just look what happened. So thank you, Pete. So sometimes, you know what, we must not think too much. We must just do it and get it done. So, and the other thing also, Pete, which I get very excited when Pete contacts me, because then I know there's some significant progress made. So thanks. I'm looking, hopefully not in the full future, we'll have another session, Pete. But thanks so much. So we both work for F&B, and Pete's been, now he's on my speed dial. Now, I leave him quite a lot of messages on a regular basis. I said, Pete, what must I do now? And you're welcome there. I see some employees joining from University of Pretoria. And Pete, I also recall that first session we spoke about my spot on the wall. So I'm looking at it, Remember that first one?
Yes, well, let me maybe give everyone context. So we've got you on a podcast interview, and I'll pop the link there because we put you on the podcast, I think it was late last year, just as you were signing up for your PhD, and you'd gone through that process of making the decision. I'm glad that I played a small part in that process. And what Yolandie has done, and which I talk about in the podcast, and I certainly advocate when I coach people about how to stay motivated through something like a PhD, is create a visualization of that end goal. Now, for me, it was a mental model of walking across the stage at the Wits Great Hall, which because of coronavirus lockdowns never actually happened. So my mental model and my visualization for achieving my PhD didn't materialize. But what Yolandie has done is actually to clear a blank space on her wall. So she's got pictures up there, but she's got a space up there, and that space is where her PhD certificate is going to go. And when she sits down, she looks at that space, and she knows that she's working hard every day, task by task, week by week, step by step through her PhD to fill that blank space with her PhD certificate. And Yolandie, I've got absolutely no doubt that you are going to be successful and achieve that. So just tell us, is the blank space still there, still working for you, still motivating you?
It's helping. So looky, there's the undergrad tickies, industrial engineering, honors industrial engineering ticks, master's engineering management, and the nail is in the wall, Pete. It's there, the spot's there, I need to do it. Well, I told myself, I told a lot of people, if I get my project proposal approved, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. There's nothing that's going to stop me. So no, we need to do this. Yes,
Fantastic.
for sure.
And Yolandie, what we're all about here in the Student Success Coach and the community and the Facebook group and the YouTube channel is really just encouraging people and giving them the tips and tricks to be successful. I can coach from my own experience, but it's also about hearing from people like yourself and the, experiences that you've had and the tips and tricks that you've got to motivate people. And everybody that's watching today and in our Facebook group will be at different stages, and they'll have different challenges and problems that they're trying to deal with. And I think people that will have joined today have got a specific interest in that research proposal stage. And, that's a successful milestone that you've achieved. And, as we were saying just before we went live, you've got to count those celebrations. You've got to tick off those milestones. Because as I often coach to people, on the Student Success Coach Facebook group, any big project in life, whether it's a PhD or a major deliverable or anything else that you're trying to tackle, and hopefully that you set a vision for and you've got some visualization of that to motivate you, the delivery of that and the execution of that is no more sophisticated than a daily consistent discipline on getting through the tasks that you have to do. Even a 4-year PhD like what you're busy with now, Yolandie, and I would say probably 15-20% of the way through, every day sitting at your desk, getting through the tasks. And I teach the Kanban board principle of cadence and reviewing that Kanban board on a regular basis. And then again, visualizing the workflow of those tasks from the left to the right. So Yolandie, let's maybe just before we dive into the research proposal, just to orientate, I think you did mention when you were listing your many other qualifications up on the wall there, you got an industrial engineering background, and then maybe just talk a little bit about what is the actual research interest or contribution that you want to make from your PhD.
Yes, so Pete, so my topic is integrating continuous improvement, which is the process optimization, with innovations thinking for the banking industry in developing countries. So that's my topic.
Wow.
It took a while to get there. I'm not going to lie. It took me a proper 6 months to finalize that one sentence. And we've changed it a few times already. So that is what we're going to do. So at F&B with Pete and everybody, we're doing quite a lot on process optimization. So I did a very nice course about 2 years ago in Stockholm, Sweden, on innovations. And we found to have a link there, but we would like to bring these two methodologies together and see how it can work for banking in developing countries. So yes, so it took, like I said, it took a while to get there, but yeah, that's what I'm going to do for the next few years.
And fantastic, Yolandie. One of the things that I would advise everybody, and that we talk about, on our different groups and in the various different channels and in my online course, etc., is always to try and link your research degree with, some other aspect of your life, such as a role that you have in the workplace or in any other context that will give you a good access to, data that you will need to get and analyze for your degree, but will also give you an outlet for ongoing contribution throughout your PhD, because never think of a PhD as just a once-off final report at the end that you then put on the shelf and hopefully write a couple of articles about. Every day that you're grappling with this topic, every day that Yolandie is reading journal articles and talking to her supervisor and doing interviews, she's developing nuggets of insights. And we at FMB value it when people can then, the next day that they come in, apply those insights in a workshop, in a meeting with a stakeholder. So it's an ongoing, continuous improvement, very much like the lean industrial engineering disciplines that you study, Yolandie. But I would often always look for that link between the real world that you live in, and then, carve out the space and the time to do a PhD and do some focused research to solve a specific problem, like Yolandie has listed just now. And what I really liked about what Yolandie's done is that she can say that statement. She's almost got it rehearsed. And as I teach in the course, in which I'll provide access to everybody just now, it's that thesis statement which really puts a box around exactly what it is that you're going to study and what you're not going to study. Because anything outside of that box is going to distract you and pull you away from your PhD, and is the single biggest cause of failure for postgraduate research students when they get pulled in different directions outside of that thesis statement. So as long as you stay within that and you are disciplined and focused, then you will be successful as a PhD student. So fantastic, Yolandie. It almost sounds like you've done my course and you applied the principles there to define a good thesis statement. And in the course, I explain how to do that. I draw it up on a whiteboard and I give you a couple of examples of how to define a good thesis statement, because that will be your golden thread. Remember, 4 years is a fairly long period of time in your life, and you need to have that as a bit of a golden thread that you weave in and through your research gathering, your literature review, your research proposal, and then ultimately your final report. There may be some deviation towards the end as a result of the variances that you pick up in your study, but broadly speaking, if you were to get into the lift with somebody, just as Yolandie has, been able to answer that question, what are you researching? You need to have that thesis statement well defined there. All right, so we've got some wonderful greetings from Quito. Welcome from Northwest University. I think, Yolandie, you're at Northwest University, so you've got your alma mater here with us. University of Limpopo, also busy with a proposal. So, Ngako, this webinar is for you today, and I really want you to ask questions, and Yolandie is going to give you the practical, real-time, most recent experience of how to be successful in your research proposal. And the last one, Siski, welcome from the University of Pretoria. Looking forward to learn more from this course. So absolutely, Siski, I'll put a link to the course now. It'll be free enrollment for the next 3 days, and you can go in there and get full details about how to do a research proposal. But what I'm going to ask Yolandie now, and the focus of this interview, is going to be the practical experience from someone just like yourself who has just gone through a research proposal, got it approved, and gives you something that you can work towards with the practical tips to get there. So, Yolandie, I know you've prepared. Take us through your thoughts on how to approach and be successful in a research proposal, and then we'll pick up a couple of chats from everybody watching today.
Right. Pete, Rome is not built in one day. Okay, I think that we must remember. And a PhD is not going to be written in one day. Okay, it's going to have its ups and its downs. You're going to have your challenges. Some days you're going to take 2 steps forward and it feels like you're taking 3 steps back again. But I think what's important is to know that is the journey. Okay, that's going to happen. You're going to have that. It's almost like I'm actually thinking, yes, there's so many. Almost like thinking about a tennis match. I love tennis, and I like to play some tennis. And my coach used to tell me, just look after and focus at each point, and then the sets will look after themselves. And that's also what you've mentioned, as try to focus on what you're currently busy. So now I had to do my project proposal, so I focused on the requirements of a project proposal. I knew my template. I knew exactly what is required, because this is so big. You can run in different directions and then you can get lost. So know exactly what is the expectation, what is the scope, and what is the problem statement. The project proposal is probably, that's what I've heard. I have not been through the journey, but one of the most difficult documents to write. And one of the most important, because that's going to set your roadmap for the rest of this 4 years. And if you can get alignment and agreement on that, then you know what direction you're going to run into. And I'm at Pikke, so Quito. I'm at the same place where you are, and I'm there at the Industrial Engineering Department, and I've got an amazing supervisor, Dr. Yolandie Richards. She's been helping me through this journey, and I need her, and I'm very grateful for her. So other day I watched with the kids the movie Alice in Wonderland again. Now, Peter, I'm not sure if you've watched that recently. It's a bit old. But there was one place where Alice, she was walking, and then she got to a tree, and the cat was in the tree. And then she asked him, which road do I take? And then he asked her, but that depends where you're going. And then she said, but I don't know. And he said, well, then doesn't matter which road you take, it will probably take you there. So I think it's very important in the project proposal to determine this few months where you are going, okay, and stick with that. The problem statement for me personally in my project proposal was probably the most important and also difficult component. I think myself and Yolandie, we spent Fridays, we usually had on Fridays our session, Fridays to determine the problem statement. And exactly, Pete, as you referred to the golden thread, if you do not have your problem statement clearly defined, you cannot write the aim, you cannot write the objective, and you don't know where you're going. So that's a golden thread that needs to be pulled through. You need to make sure you've got a valid problem, and you need to be able to prove it. And then right through the project proposal and through the PhD, you need to link it back to that. And the end, you need to prove that you actually solved that through your verification and validation. So that's a key critical component for me personally to get sorted out. And when we went into that discussion on project proposal, I was lucky mine was approved, had a lot of support from Yolandie. And some of the employees, they said, was not approved. But I think what's important to remember is you don't want to hear that after 4 years. You want to, if something is not right or that idea is not 100% and you need to go back to the drawing board, you want to hear it as early as possible in the process. And that is okay. It's okay. If it's not approved, then you go back to the drawing board and you work towards and you take the learnings and you try again. Now, there's something that I've mentioned it in the first session we had, and it's grit, Grit. And it's passion and perseverance. It's day in and day out. You've got a clear goal, and that's what you're striving towards every day. And it's also about a lot of growth mindset. And I think the learning out of that is that, and you need to take it out of that, is that any type of component of failure is not a permanent condition. It's not permanent, and we can change and we can learn out of it. Okay, I think that is crucial to remember throughout this journey. And there is something like, I'm not sure, Pete, maybe you know the right word, positive or green criticism. Okay, that is good, because otherwise it's not a PhD. I remember with me and Rionette, we would sit hours and hours up and down in these discussions. And then I said, after a while, I said, am I on the right track? She said, if we agreed on everything, this is not worth a PhD. Okay, this is not worth a PhD. We're going to struggle. We're going to argument, and then eventually, hopefully, we get alignment going forward. So that is normal. It's almost like, I can't help to think about the change management curve. Now we're all excited. We're going to do this PhD, and then the graph goes down. And then they call it valley of despair. It's terrible. You're going to that because that's when you're unsure. You don't know where to go. You don't know what to do. And then eventually, hopefully, you get out of it, and then you're at a better place than you were initially. But I think the big thing there is to realize that that is the curve. You're going to go up and down. You're going to go up and down, but that's okay. I remember, and I heard about STAR the other day on WhatsApp. So I started this message that Rionette sent me afterwards. We had a session, and I was like, I'm just not sure where we're going. And then she left me a message afterwards to tell me, you're okay. This is going to be okay. You're on the right track. And this is exactly words. I can see where this is going, and this is okay. And I needed that at that point in time. And Rionette told me she's just not here now, but she's going to listen to the recording. I'm going to need that a few more times, a few times in the year. This is okay. I remember after our sessions, we do it in teams, and I'll record the session. And then I would be so overwhelmed. I would go outside and just sit in the sun, hope to get some vitamin D, and maybe things might just make sense in my head. And that would be what I would do afterwards. And then I thought to myself, if it doesn't make sense, maybe after a good night of sleep, it might just make sense. Sometimes it does. Sometimes you have components of it. But that is the journey that you're going to expect. And it's okay. So do not have the grit, have the passion and perseverance every day. And it's okay. A big thing is, do not suffer in silence. You're going to suffer a bit from time to time. That is normal. But don't suffer in silence. No, I'm very fortunate to have an amazing mentor and a supervisor, but make use of the program and the support that Peter's team is giving, because this can get a very lonely journey. It can get lonely. Now you're sitting your own with research. So I think it's very important to make use of these opportunities. And also, if I take the mentor and the supervisor and the Pete's, which been through this, and I'm sitting in front of me. Let me show you. I'm in front of me. This book is 20 years old. Well, that's when I got it. 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And it says, I think it's goal 2. It's have the end in mind. Okay, so whatever you do, you need to know where you're going. And that is where your mentor and your Pete's will assist you, because they've been through this. They know where you're going, and listen to them. They will assist you with that. So I think that's very important. And also, and Pete spoke about the small successes. You need to celebrate the small successes. That's very important. And now I'm just trying to think of my next big deliverable. End of this year, I need to do a systematic literature review to compare or to determine the state of the art, and this is all stuff that I read from Rionette, it's not just me speaking here, determine the state of the art of these 2 methodologies to see how they overlap. And then I need to come out with an artifact, okay, which is probably going to be some kind of comparative analysis, and I need to take it to a journal, which I don't know where to go yet. But that is quite overwhelming for me, to be very honest. That's overwhelming. So what did I tell me? Let's break this up in small, manageable components. And Pete, I've sent you that picture of the ladder. The 2 people with a ladder. So they're all going to the same end goal, but the one's got these massive, big steps, and the other one's got smaller ones. And the one with the smaller one, it's a bit more manageable. So for me, the next 2-3 weeks, I need to get my referencing under control with EndNote. And thanks, Pete. You send me the link. I'm going to attend that course because I like interaction. I'm not good with this, with the book. I struggle with the book. My mind is just everywhere. So I'm going to attend that course, and that's what I want to accomplish within the next 2 to 3 weeks. Okay, and then I know sometimes things happen in theory, but I personally love to do things in parallel because you get tired sometimes of something. So that's the one thing. The other thing is I need to, that picker library I need to get figured out. So that's the two things I want to do in parallel for the next 2-3 weeks. And after I've accomplished it and tick the box, I'm going to celebrate that. Whatever form I'm probably going to call Pete and say, I've done it, Pete. I'm going to call Renette, I've done that. Whatever form works for you. And you need to, I personally believe you need to do that. That's quite important. Yes, so that's sort of some of the guidelines and some of the things that assisted me throughout this journey. But obviously, it is a long journey, and we'll learn and continue learning. Now, it's like you spoke about the continuous learning. Now, so in the training at FNB, we use the Japanese word kaizen, small, continuous, ongoing improvements. And that's sort of what we do. But it is an exciting journey, and we know it's going to be tough, but it's okay. It's okay that it's going to be tough. So, yeah. So that's sort of in a nutshell what worked for me up to now. That's the past, I would say, 7-8 months. So
well
luckily
done.
tick the box. Yeah, and have patience. Have patience. That is what it is, eh?
No, well done, Yolandie. And I just wanted to go back when you've mentioned wonderful topics, and let's just break a couple of them down a little bit. And the first one was, I think you've obviously got a good relationship with the supervisor, so that's a massive tick, and I think that is very important. And I don't think everybody can say the same, which is unfortunate. And I get a lot of people that have some challenges with their relationship with their student success, with their supervisor. And so there's some aspects that we cover around emotional intelligence and mental health and so on that can start to help people deal with that. But it is a relationship that you need to work on. And great if you do have a good relationship with your supervisor, because I think, Yolandie, you were able to combine a little bit of that mentorship and coaching with the supervisor relationship. Other people may have a bit more of a formal relationship with their supervisor as a representative of their institution, but then maybe need to look for coaching and mentoring and support elsewhere, like in the Student Success Coach Facebook group. And I've just put a link on the chat to come and join us in the Facebook group. And that's Yolandie's also very active there. Tracy Ashington, who's often on these webinars, is also very active there. And that environment really, I think, hopefully answers that practical need, if you have one, of where you can just get the encouragement of the support, and also mentorship. We actually have a mentorship program in the Facebook group. We have 6 people already signed up that have made themselves available as mentors. And if you're going through a research proposal stage, I mean, that is a very useful way of, just as Yolandie has done, bouncing ideas off and refining your thinking as you're developing your topic, understanding what statement is, and then sitting down and writing a research proposal and going through those steps of documenting it, presenting it, and getting it approved. So I would really advise you to join us in the Facebook group there. It's also one of the ways you can get in touch with me. I offer 30-minute coaching calls for free, and I can also give you some insights from my own experience. So, Yolandie, that was just on the topic of getting the support and encouragement that people need. And certainly in lockdown and pandemics, we've not been on campus as much, and that human interaction, I think we've lost a lot of that, and we have to compensate for that in any ways that we possibly can. So please do pop into our Facebook group and be active there if you need help on your journey. And then, Yolandie, you also touched on a very important topic around getting on top of references and sources and the literature and the library and so on. And certainly when you're going into the proposal stage, from an academic perspective, you're trying to understand what is the existing research, what is the existing literature and work that's already been done. And look, there may be somebody that's already done the exact same study to solve the exact same problem that you thought was such a brilliant idea. Now, you just need to be careful and aware of whether that is the case, or whether there's a nice gap in the literature. And I think, Yolandie, I was involved a little bit in just looking at some of the journals and doing a little bit of research of whether the topic that you were going into was going to make a significant contribution, not only in academia but also in the world around us. And that literature review and understanding those sources and navigating your way around the different academic databases is something perhaps that's not the most fun or enjoyable aspect of it, but just such a necessary skill and habit to develop that can be so fundamental to your success as a PhD student, and especially at the stage of your research proposal. Because I'm guessing, Yolandie, in your research proposal, you had to look at the literature, understand it a little bit, and then include almost a mini literature review in your initial proposal so that the institution could be comfortable that you were exploring a worthwhile gap in academic literature. And it was then good for them to support that, to take that forward, because there would be good publication opportunities, etc. So just to everybody that, Yolandie mentioned the course, I've put a link to the course on referencing with EndNote. Now, EndNote is a source library tool, effectively, so that as you're finding those studies and publications, you can house them somewhere that you can easily get access to them later. And if you set it up properly, when you're actually writing your research proposal or your final report, you can do what's called cite as you write. And as you're writing up your document, you can quickly go and navigate through your EndNote library inside Microsoft Word, search for that study or publication or document that you want to include and that you hopefully remembered at that time, click a few buttons, and then using your faculty's referencing style, it brings that citation into that paragraph and it adds it to the references at the end of the document. So all of that I teach you in the course there that you can get access to. And I loved what Meryl said about daydreaming to find the topic. And I said, good luck to you, Meryl. And look, we'll help you in the Facebook group, and you can also get in touch with Yolandie there. It's fantastic to daydream and think about these wonderful big problems that we can solve, but you have to root that back down in a very well-defined problem statement and a topic and all of those aspects to ultimately be successful in your PhD journal. And the way I like to think about it is, once you've gone through that PhD process, yes, you're making a daily contribution, but once you've got that doctorate and you've been endorsed to have become an expert in that, that's when you go back into the clouds, and that's when you can then tell your story and give your message out to the rest of the world. So when we talk to Dr. Yolandie Richards in 4 years' time, and she's got insights and unique contributions to make around her topic, that's again that opportunity to engage and share in a sort of a wider creative environment. I see Moswatsi is busy with a PhD radiography proposal, so good luck there to Moswatsi. And I wanted to ask a question now to you, Yolandie, and I'm just trying to find the question here, but it was about the oral defense. So did you have to do an oral presentation of your proposal, and can you just share your preparation and the tips and tricks in the process of doing that?
Yes, of course. Yes, we had a presentation. There's a panel at BICA, and it consists of industrial engineering. So I had to basically present my project proposal. So I had to write a proper Word document. I've submitted, and also the proposal. And then, but the focus more on the proposal for this point in time. And then they sort of worked through it before the time, and we presented. And a lot of focus was on the problem statement. A lot of focus is, do we know this is a unique problem? Can I prove it? And will I be able to put something uniquely in place and verify that it actually, and validate that it actually did solve the problem? So a lot of focus on that. Also a lot of focus on the bit of literature review to say, have I done some research? And that's bit where I made a note here. I did not make use of EndNote, and I struggled. Okay, so I picked up and I realized I only wrote a 10, 15 page document for project proposal. I'm not going to try to use the same approach for my end one. So that's why I have made a big note to get EndNote sorted, and also the referencing, because that took a lot of time. So I can just imagine going forward. Also, strange enough, Pete, I'm not sure if this is a course that you do offer. It's just some basic word skills again. I had to go and try to figure out some of the stuff again, of course, just to make it for yourself so much easier. Now, there's some key stuff, but we can chat about it a bit later, which I forgot. Now, I haven't written a proper Word document like this in a while, so I struggled a little bit there, but we can chat about that. But I think very important for that presentation the day was to also know what was the expectations and what was the criteria and what did I have to present. Because as Pete mentioned, you can very easily get lost And I can see that happening very easily. You can get lost because you're sitting with this world of information, and it's very important to get that problem statement and your scope very clearly defined, and then stay within that. And if they tell you you've got 15 minutes, you've got 15 minutes. Okay? You need to stay within your 15 minutes and make sure that you cover the most critical components in that. So you need to be very well prepared. But again, I was lucky with Rianette to actually sit with her before the time, and she could share with me some of her learnings as well. So again, don't try to do this just on your own. Ask for advice and stay within what is requirement and the scope for that specific purpose. Yes, definitely.
Wonderful. Thank you, Yolandie. And then just to add on to that from my own experience, a critical aspect is, and I would presume, obviously, Yolandie, you maybe prepared a few slides as well, just to handle that presentation component. And that is certainly something that people struggle with a little bit, because you've again got to lift up quite a significant amount of detail to a level of a sort of an executive summary of what your research is all about, and take people through a little bit of a journey in a very short space of time without giving them too much information, but giving them the comfort that you know exactly what your problem statement is. You've zoned in on your topic. You've done enough literature review. There's a high degree of success, and that's also what the institution is interested in seeing, is whether they approve your research proposal, whether you're actually then going to be quite successful. I think it's more than 50% of people drop out of postgraduate level research degrees, and universities rely very highly on funding for their operations through the number of successful research degrees that they manage to achieve. So the university is very interested in making sure that you're successful, but the checkpoint for them is at that research proposal stage, so that they can approve you with some level of comfort that you will be successful. I just want to, Siwe mentioned, I love how the EndNote referencing works, and maybe just to touch on that very quickly. Unfortunately, it isn't free. You will have to pay for it. But very much like Yolandie, I was messing around with PDFs on my laptop in different folders for my research proposal, and I only figured out EndNote and got good at referencing when I did my final report. So what I teach in the course is to learn from my bad experience and the way that I didn't do it, and almost start as early as you can in your research degree by getting disciplined about having a referencing system, and then linking that in with whatever tool you're using to actually write your documents. And that will save you hours and hours and hours and hours of time, and almost get to the point where you are enjoying referencing and the importance of bringing the literature into your own writing and seeing how that supports the contribution that you're making. And Siwe says they're worth paying for. I did interview the head of the convocation, Stacey Lee Bolon, on the podcast. So she's on the WITS senior council, and I asked her, I said, why doesn't WITS just fund EndNote licenses for students? WITS does fund Zotero, which is a cloud-based referencing system, which I don't know too well, but presumably would give you the same advantages. Okay, Yolandie, now let's just talk a little bit. You mentioned you wrote a document and you had a little bit of a literature review in there. Just talk about your impressions of when we spoke 6 months ago to what that document actually ended up looking like, and imagining people that are going into that process. Tips and ideas. So you spoke about getting good at Word. We spoke about referencing. You spoke about the importance of bouncing ideas off of somebody. But the actual writing of the document, in support of that process, tips and ideas on that process?
Yes, so there's a few things that we cover. So you cover the background, and then you've got your problem statement, your aim, and then you've got your methodologies, your verification, validation. My specific PhD, we're going to break up in articles. Guys, there's pros and cons to that, but we're going to attempt that to articles. So for me, it's more components and it's more manageable. So I've got sort of end goals, but each one I have to have a clear problem statement. It needs to link into each other. And it's almost like an input process output. The output of the one goes into the problem statement of the other one. But as I mentioned, that problem statement, because when I had that problem statement clear and defined, I can pull it actually back weird. I could pull it back into my background because I elaborated on that. And Ronette told me in that problem statement, there's a few keywords. I had innovations, continuous improvement, banking, developing countries. So I had to go and get literature review on all of those. And I had to go and identify the need, because when you go through the background, it needs to sort of then flow into your problem statement again. I've got this background. I see it's important to have it. this has been successful. Why is the need there? And that it flows into my problem statement. So this, and then the next, and then that flows into my objective statement again and my aim. So in that document, everything flows, and you need to make sure. Something I personally struggled with, and Peter, I don't know if you have a course on this one, but it's a bit of storytelling as well. Now, as you also being an engineer, I wanted to do bullet points, and I can't. I can't do bullet points. So this thing needs to flow. It needs to have a story. And I think for some engineers, maybe that might be challenging to actually write that. So that portion, although my project proposal has been approved, Renee told me, we're not done there yet. You need to go back. I've got a lot of loose standing items. So I did a lot of reading, had some books, I did some journals, and I've got loose standing components. But how do I let this thing flow and put it in a nice format? I'm not a good writer. I love presenting. I'll do this every day, but I'm not a good writer. So how do I get support there? Do I get somebody to assist me there? Or how do I do this? Because I need to write, I struggled with a 10-page document. It took me 6 months. How I'm going to write how big is your proposal? How big was your final document? Pages? 200?
It was quite extensive, actually. I wrote probably too much. To be honest. And maybe just on that point, Yolandie, is that in the research proposals course, you'll actually get my research proposal document and my presentation slides. So you can actually have a look at what I did in my research proposal as well. So both my presentation and my actual document is in there. But Yolandie, it was probably unnecessarily long. So,
so I just thought it was...
I actually wrote two because what they said was, okay, that's fantastic, but we want like a summary version of it. So I actually wrote the very long one and then the high level one. But Yolandie, just the point worth making, and I touch on this in my course about how to be successful in your final report. I never regretted doing the extra work on my research proposal because a lot of that work I then reused and repurposed in my final report, and it laid the groundwork. When I came back to writing that final report 3.5 years later, I had this very extensive research proposal document, and it was so good to be able to go and, obviously move things around and change things quite a lot, but it just reduced the amount of actual writing and words that I had to create for my final report. So that's just one thing that I do teach in the courses is put a lot of effort into your research proposal, because you'll never regret that. It'll always be useful for throughout your study and especially your final report.
Yes, and I know when I did my master's, this was a lot of years ago, so I'm not sure if things probably changed. Like I said, we did not have EndNote at that time, so I'm very grateful for EndNote now. But also support on the document itself. So for those that's not, English is not my first language. So you've got the research, which is challenging, and then you've got the writing component, which is challenging. So I'm not sure if you've got any guidelines. I'm throwing it back to you, Pete. Now I'm boomeranging it. Do you have any advice on that while we were at these discussions?
Yeah, absolutely. So I have a course on how to double your academic writing quality. So in that course, I teach just good practices around sentence construction and developing well-structured paragraphs, and those really are the building blocks of whatever academic writing project you're working on. So there's some value there for people just to get their thoughts right, because when you write, you have to think like a reader, and a reader is going to either be exhausted by poor writing, or they're going to be energized by something that's well written and tells the story exactly as you have said, Yolandie, and takes them on that journey with that golden thread. And your supervisors will be the main audience for your research proposal, and then your examiners for your final report. So the quality of writing is very important. That would be one piece of advice, and I'll put a link to the course just now. The other piece of advice, Yolandie, is to get an editor. Get a professional editor to help you. If English is not your first language, I had 2 editors for my final report, and the one was very strong on semicolons and commas and grammar, and the other one was a little bit more stronger on some of the academic turns of phrase that I was using. And I valued all the edits that both of them made. And I'll go and look for the webinar. We had an interview with Anneleen Creel, I think it was. I forget the name exactly, but she offers a professional editing service, and she's available inside the Facebook group. And in fact, in that webinar, we ran a promotion where she was going to then provide, I think, 10 people 1 hour's free editing services. So the link to the Facebook group, if you join that up, come into the group and you'll see access to her and her services. So those would be the 2 and maybe a third piece of advice, Yolandie, which I have a lot of videos on in the YouTube channel, which you guys can also subscribe to. I put the link there as well. Is write early, write often. And when I say write early, it's not just early in the day. My pattern was to stop in a coffee shop on the way to work and get 45 minutes of writing done before I started my day. But write early in the deadline that you're working towards. So now Yolandie's been talking about this article that she has to write. And Yolandie, I'd love to just spend 5 minutes on what you talked about just now, a thesis by publication. So we'll just pause on that for a second just now as well. But my advice to Yolandie would be to start the generative writing process as early as possible. So just don't judge your writing. Just write bullet points, write mind maps, write sticky notes, write continuously. Even if you don't know what to write, I don't know what to write. And eventually the brain starts to unlock. And the brain is going to have all these wonderful thoughts in it. But until your brain connects with your fingers or your keyboard, you're not going to get those thoughts down onto paper or onto your document. So the practice of writing often also helps unlock that, because if you get into a daily discipline of writing, then when you sit down to write, it doesn't feel difficult. If you don't brush your teeth, you don't get good at brushing your teeth. If you don't drive every day, I mean, like many of us didn't drive for 3 months, and then suddenly we get in a car, when the lockdowns lifted and we've forgotten how to drive, right? So, write early in the process. I like to write early in the day, and then write as often as you can. And that generative writing, no one has to see that. You will eventually edit that and improve that to something that people will review. But you have to start with that generative writing process. And especially when you look at a thing like a topic development or developing a problem statement, start with that generative writing process. Mind map it, or just creative writing. Share it with your mentor or somebody that you trust that can give you some input on it. But so, Yolandie, that would be my thoughts on that. But Yolandie, let's just pause very quickly, because you mentioned you're doing a thesis by publication. Now, there's mainly two ways you can do a PhD. One is through a final report, or by publication, which is very interesting. And I've met a few people that are doing it. I don't know many. You're one of them. And you and I had long chats about doing it. And I certainly wish you well. And I'm going to learn from that. And we'll have you back on the show to find out more about that. But just explain, what does that mean?
Yes, so I'm basically looking into about 4 to 5 articles, which I'm going to write. So now, for me personally, without knowing too much the pros and cons of it, for me to write a document over 3.5, 4 years, for my personality, I'm going to struggle. So for me, it's better to have small, quick deliverables. So I've got an end-to-end, but each one needs to have a very clear problem statement. Each one needs to have an aim, an artifact, and a journal. Okay, so while I would think your final, if you only have one document, you sort of have one. And these 4 I'm thinking of 4, might be 5, I hope 4. It needs to flow. So that's quite important. Each one needs to be approved as well. So I still need to sit with you on that, but if I understand, I think I need to have at least 1 published, or 1 or 2 published. So I'll just get those criteria. So there's some other criteria that we need to look into. But for me, and for your Renette, sort of together, we decided for me that might be the better option. But yeah, I'm very happy to learn through this, and then to come back and share that. And then, Pete, we can compare the two. You've done the one, I've done the other one, and let's look at the pros and the cons of that. But yeah, that is, we'll learn as we continue. At this point in time, it sounds like the option for me. We'll see as we continue.
And Yolandie, I guess that's something that you had to position in your research proposal. Yes. And did you get specific questions from your panel about your choice of doing it by publication? And what were those questions?
Yes, so I had very clearly, I actually have in front of me just the one. Okay, there's the one. That's component I had to do. That's just my first article. I've got actually printed in front of me. So I had to very clearly indicate each article. And yeah, I've got here the article, the theory, the aim, method, artifact, and journal. That was sort of the criteria I had to present. So that was a bit difficult, because it's actually already quite a lot of detail in an early stage of my research. So I almost want to say my first and second article was quite clearly defined, and then my third and fourth article was very dependent on the outcome of my first and second article. And then when we got to the final one, I almost want to say that final article was very much in line with my overall artifact and deliverables. So yes, they did look into it. I would say For my entire project proposal, we've probably spent the most time on my problem statement. And then we've also spent some time a little bit on the method and the high level, the articles for sure. So they did definitely look into that. But I would almost want to say main was the problem statement to make sure that it's valid, it's unique. I will be able to get data. I think that was also a big thing that came up. Will I be able to get data for this? Because that's also something, if you can't send out questionnaires or have interviews or focus group, whatever you have, if you don't have data, you can't do this thing. So that was also something that came up, and that was I was very grateful for the supervisor because, again, they've got the end goal in mind and they've been through this journey and they might know where students struggle. So that was also quite a big focus point.
Yeah. Fantastic, Yolandie. And I think between the two of us, we've got the two different angles. So people that are interested in finding out more, just contact either of us and we're available in the Facebook group. I just wanted to pick up on Busisiwe's question here, who says that they get nervous whenever they have to write. Okay, so just on that first point there, as I mentioned, practice generative writing, which is that no one will ever see that writing, whether it's in a handwritten journal or just in a scratch pad or notes on an app on your phone or on your computer. You have to just get into a regular habit of doing generative writing so that you get more confident with writing, but also recognizing, obviously, if it's not your second language, there's other aspects there which perhaps I don't understand fully and I'm not sensitive to. But my advice would be the same, is just to continue practicing writing so that you get more confident about it. And as I say, happy to hop on a call and chat through, tips and tricks to help you get through that nervous energy when you're writing. Then the second point there that you make was to see we're struggling a bit with creating the golden thread. So, Yolandie mentioned she's very visual and she creates a little bit of a mind map, and that's just a couple of stickies on a wall with a central kind of common theme. But ultimately, it's distilling out of there exactly what Yolandie said just now, the 5 or 6 key words. And then you would use those keywords in your problem statement or your thesis statement. And that is the golden thread. The difficulty that I find most people having with a golden thread is actually settling on it and thinking that they need to solve bigger problems or solve hunger for the world guys, unfortunately, I made peace with the fact that I wasn't going to get a Nobel Prize for my PhD. My simple objective was to produce a final report that passed and made a contribution to my field. And writing a definitive thesis statement is critical to doing that. And that the only way that thesis statement will see you successfully through the PhD is with a golden thread. So those are a couple of thoughts around golden threads and just getting confident with writing. We had a great question here from a lady by the name of Petrine Vechter. So a very warm welcome to Petrine, a great friend of both myself and Yolandie. And Petrine asks, hi guys, how do you know where to start when looking for a topic and starting with a proposal? Yolandie.
Yes, no, that is a very good question, Petrine. So I don't think, I sort of made the decision I want to do PhD. So then it was not like, okay, let's go and read. Okay, you can do it. But it's almost like I want to say you need to keep your eyes and ears constantly open to identify gaps. Okay, it's not necessarily by taking a book and reading it. You might get that. But so my specific one, so I can maybe share my example, is I was very fortunate. First Rand sent me on a training in Stockholm, Sweden, and we were sitting in the class on innovations, and they started speaking about process optimization, which I'm very familiar with, but the big focus was on innovations. And then when they spoke, and our lecturer at that time wrote a few books, and then he constantly referred to a gap. He said, this is a gap, this is a gap, this is a gap. And then that my mind started going. And then that sort of stick, and then I eventually decided this might be a potential topic. And then I started with my research. So I was actually very lucky to say I was looking out for it. I was looking for a topic. And then I said, you must keep that eyes and ears open. You must be part of discussions. You need to, we need to constantly learn and attend courses and attend modules with Pete. And then someday, you might accidentally hear it. And that might trigger a head, and you might then start with it. But I would think probably everybody's journey it might be different. And I also agree with Pete to stay with something that you can use in your day-to-day job. So we're doing the process optimization. FirstRand is very strong in innovation. So how do we get these two worlds together? Okay, so that we can actually practically use in my day-to-day job. And also what Pete said, I'm also not going to try to solve world problems. Okay, I'm going to select a scope that is manageable for me. And I know, so I'm familiar with process optimization. Innovation's not that familiar, so I have to do a lot of research there. And then obviously, the big challenge is to bring these two methodologies together and to get that thinking together. So I'm going to have enough challenges to write the document and to follow the approach, and to finish this is going to be a big challenge. To write this is going to be a big challenge. To do the innovations is going to be a big challenge. But I did not select two methodologies. That's going to be mind-blowing for me. So I think that is quite important. And I made a note here, Pete, I'm definitely going to make use of the editor because I know my strength and I know my weaknesses. Okay. And I had a very strong, amazing mentor in my previous job. And he always told us, now understand your strength, and it's a bit of EQ. Understand your strength, understand your weaknesses, and be the best in what you're good at and manage your weaknesses. So I'm going to select areas and I'm going to do stuff and I'm going to try to be brilliant at that. But the stuff like the writing, which I'm not, I know it's not my strength, I'm just going to try to manage it. So I'm going to make use of people to assist me. I'm going to make use of techniques to assist me to be able to do it. But yeah, the thing is with a PhD, it must be unique and your solution must be unique. So it's not that easy. So to find that topic is it's probably one of the most difficult things to do, my experience in PhD up to now.
Yolandie, thank you so much for that. I've just put a link into the chat with the interview that we did with, her name is Louise Coiler, and she's active in the Facebook group, and she has a professional editing service. That's what she does. That's her job. So I put the link to the webinar in the chat for everybody there. And then we got some great questions here, just building on from what you were saying about how hard it is to find that topic. Yolandie, how would you answer Sipokazi's question there? How do you begin finding a topic that is PhD worthy?
Yes, so that's why. So if you're lucky and you keep your eyes and ears open, you might hear it somewhere. But then obviously you need to continue the research. But I think also is maybe to network with the right people. Surround you with the people that's also maybe doing research, or like the Pete. So that's why I enjoy spending time with Pete, as he is in that mindset. So maybe try to read. Obviously, you have to read. And you're not gonna finish this PhD if you're not gonna sit down and read and read and read and read. And I think the more you read as well, and I made a note of this, I think the better your writing skills will become as well. So your day in and your day out needs to be looking out for the stuff, reading the right stuff. And I think maybe also that's, Pete, where you can also guide us all a bit, is where to go and find that right stuff, go and find the right journal. So I almost want to say, when I only registered for my PhD, I got access to the library of the Picker, which is a massive amount of valuable information. So I actually wish I had that a little bit earlier. I was fortunate with the topic, fairly easy, okay? But then I'm going to obviously explore more. But for somebody that don't have a topic, where do they go? Now that, like a library, would be amazing to actually go, because a lot of project proposals, a lot of research at the end will also identify a gap. So that might also be a place for you. So go and maybe see what you're interested in, because I don't think you must select something that doesn't interest you. And like Pete said, this is not just a tick box. This is something you're going to take throughout your career probably, because that's, you're going to become sort of a subject matter expert. Now, people are going to come to you and ask them, or maybe in your day-to-day job. So maybe select some topics that you're interested in and that you're passionate about, and then go and reach a few, maybe not end-to-end PhD documents, that's a bit overwhelming, but maybe a few journals, and just read through it high level and see if they maybe identify some gaps. That might assist you to get some topics as well.
I think that's so powerful, Yolandie, because at the end of pretty much all journal articles, final reports, you'll see a little section at the end there, suggested future work. And those are topics there that the researchers themselves came up with in their own research, but they hadn't included in their scope, and they weren't able or were unwilling to include in their research, and which almost lays the groundwork to confirm that it's a worthy topic. So Koketso, no problem. Thank you for joining us. Great to have you. Yolandie, yes, did give a bit of an intro at the beginning, but Yolandie, just to answer Koketso's question here, I guess you're in both academia and industry, working full-time, studying part-time, very much like I was. But maybe just her question there, is it advisable to do a PhD early in one's career, i.e. soon after master's, without industrial exposure? Your thoughts on that?
Yes. Well, actually, this same mentor I've just referred to. I actually am meeting with him on Monday. Louis Karstens, Dr. Louis Karstens, he's got 2 PhD degrees, and at a very early stage in my life, he actually motivated me on a regular basis. And then after a session like this, I'm usually motivated, but he climbs like all the summits, so he's like next level. but I remember when he'll meet with me, and that was early in my career. He would ask me, Yolandie, what's next? What are you going to do next? I'm like, okay, Louis, just calm down a bit. I just want to finish this and this. And I said, then maybe when I'm 40 or 50, I'll maybe do a PhD. I said, no, that's too late. You need to move quickly. You need to move quickly. So there's a lot of different opinions. And I think I must say the older I get, especially for women, you might get kids and you might get married. So it gets challenging to juggle all of these things. So my kids are now 9 and 11. So I don't have to look after them every day. So I sort now I've got a little bit of a gap. I've got a bit more me time. So now I'm ready for this. I'm going to do this. I've got a little bit more time. So I think each person, because it does take time, but you're never going to get that ideal time. You're never going to say, now I'm ready. And that's what Pete told me, Les. I said, Pete, maybe I must first wait for this. Maybe. He said, no, go for it. There's no better time than now. So you're not going to get the ideal time to do it. So, but I also want to say, when I sort of made the decision, but I needed some encouragement, like with Pete, just to do it. When I made the decision, I'm going to do it. I almost want to say, now we can debate the percentage to that. And then I'm probably already 20% there. Okay, so you need to make a very clear decision, and you need to be committed to it. So you need to be clear in your head. I'm going to do it now, and I'm committed to it. So if you can't do that, then you're not ready. But again, saying that, it's never going to be an ideal time. So I think if you say like in your academic career or industry and academic, obviously if you're in the industry, you've got a bit more practical, and I think it's going to probably be easier for me personally to get data, because I'm giving training. I'm probably going to get a lot of my data there. So that is something that will assist me to do it. And also obviously the practical component. But if you're in the academic, you understand the academic world also quite good. So that might be a pro for you if you're in that area. You understand writing much better. You understand the requirements. You understand research. So the practical component and the data, I think I've got a bit of a head start there. But if you're in the academic, that requires, because this is very much academic, very academic. I think I can have an amazing project out there practically, but it might not comply with the academic requirements.
Yep.
So you need to have the balance between the two of them. But there's not ideal time. I think do it as quick as possible, but make a decision that you can and you're committed to it. In a nutshell.
No, great insight there, Yolandie. Thank you. And just to add a couple of very brief thoughts from my side, I think the biggest breakthroughs in the world comes at the junction between different fields, different faculties, and between academia and industry. And you get a lot of people in industry that say, oh, academics sit in an ivory tower, and you get a lot of academics that say, well, industry don't understand the theory of the thing. And I really believe that it requires people that are willing to straddle, academia and industry, think through the practicalities on a daily basis, but then carve out the time to properly intellectualize and study and research those topics. But that's not to say you'd have to do it that way. You can do it either as a full-time student and take a break from work, or part-time as you need to. And then I just wanted to come to Joseph's quick question here about finding a PhD topic while you're an undergraduate student. I do think that if you have the vision to do a PhD at that early stage, then it's very helpful if you can create, and Yolandie spoke about a ladder earlier. And a ladder, if you can start the steps on your PhD as early as possible, even with your undergrad or your master's level work, yes, it might be ups and downs, but if it's broadly in the same direction, then if you've done an undergraduate and even master's level research study on something that is more or less related to what you want to do your PhD on, then the groundwork and the topic development and the problem statement and the engagement with the literature and the focus that you've got on that topic before you get there is so much greater. So Yolandie and I almost did our PhDs from cold. We hadn't had formal research academic qualifications in those areas previously. So once again, like we said just now, in your master's report, you would then have a small little section there that says final future work. And then that future work could define your own PhD. You could be the person that continues the work that you started in the master's. Okay, Yolandie, so we're out of time, but we've had some fantastic feedback. So Koketso Thank you very much. Sipokazi also said thank you, Yolandie. Very
Yes.
helpful. So I've put the link to the course in the chat there, so you guys can go and take up that offer. It is free enrollment for the next few days, and a lot of what Yolandie and I have been talking about today, you will get proper, detailed, one-on-one teaching, coaching, and engagement on, and you will see my presentation slides from my research proposal, and you will see my actual research proposal document. So Yolandie, with that, any last final words of encouragement and wisdom and advice for the team?
But I actually quickly want to ask, I think we've got 1 minute left. Now, I think to finish a PhD is quite overwhelming, and I've met some of them, and they seem exhausted after it. How do you get the energy? You finished your PhD directly thereafter. This is what you do. What is your recipe? How did you do this? How did
Thank
you
you,
stay
Yolandie.
motivated? How do you keep the energy?
No, I definitely had my down days, and I definitely had the days when I wanted to give up. I definitely did. And I recognized my own human weakness, and I needed to compensate for that with people around me that I could reach out to and just talk it through and just, be vulnerable in my weakness. And that's why, in creating the Student Success Coach as a brand and as a community, I've got a very good sense of what other people like myself, having gone through that journey, will require. And it's not that somebody else needs to solve your problems. You must solve your problem. You made the decision. You must live your life. You must walk the steps in your life as best as they arrive in front of you. But we all need to just have that outlet to get, as you say, the motivation and the encouragement that we need. I will say, Yolandie, that when you do your PhD, just again, get it done. Don't if you let it delay and you get tired of it and it becomes a drag to keep coming back to, then you won't have any energy at the end to do the publications and to carry on using that PhD to help other people. You'll be tired of it and you won't want to see another journal article or another topic again about it. And one of the very common themes in the Student Success Coach Facebook group and my courses, etc., is this disciplined daily motivation of getting things done. And I really try and aim to give people the practical tips and tricks that keeps them motivated and gets them to the end goal as soon as possible. So Yolandie, and I'm happy to talk about that in more detail with anybody that would need some insights. But the links are all there in the chat. So go and take action, guys. Enroll in the courses. Follow the links. You can check out the YouTube channel. You can subscribe and get the recording for this webinar and get notified of future webinars. Jump in the Facebook group. Get access to Yolandie, Louise Coiler, Tracy Ashington, and myself, and many other people that can help you on the journey. Cindy Amunga is a regular. Thanks, Cindy. Appreciate you joining us. I think Cindy's almost finished her PhD. So, Cindy, you're well down the track. We should be interviewing you at some point. But thank you for your support and thank you for being here. Yolandie, really good to chat. Have a good Friday and a good weekend.
Thanks, Pete. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, guys.
Cheers.